Alrighty, good morning, everyone. We'll kick off. It's good to see y'all. Thanks for being here. Just as a heads up, we're recording this call. So we will share out that recording after this meeting. If there are others in your organization who weren't able to join, feel free to share that out with them. Before we get into today's programming, which I'm really looking forward to, I do have a few announcements just about upcoming Alliance activities that I want to make sure we have time for. So I'll start with that, and then I'll give a brief intro about our presenters today and what our program looks at before passing it off for presentations. So the first thing that I want to flag is the 2025 Texas Innovation Invitational. So we're excited to share that we will be in Fort Worth this year, June 16th through 18th. And the website and registration link is live. I'll share that in the chat and over email after this call. For those of you who have joined us for this annual event in the past, you know it's a great way to connect with folks, meet in person. We'll have similar programming where we'll have a technology showcase where you can interact with and learn about the technology up close. And then we'll have kind of typical conference programming, so plenaries and breakout sessions and fireside chats that cover topics from innovation, multimodal transportation, implementation, and what that means, project readiness, and economic development. And then we're excited to again have the team showcase on day 3, where teams can pitch project ideas to a panel of experts for feedback and advancing that project with regional stakeholders. So the programming and format will look a lot like years past, but we will be in Fort Worth this year. We're excited about it. Share it far and wide. And like I said, I'll send out the link for that and our draft agenda so that you have that as a reference point. The other thing I wanted to flag is our next in-person meeting. So y'all may remember last year we started meeting quarterly in person. April 23rd is our spring meeting. We will be at the TxDOT Stastny campus in Austin. We will focus on a local, regional, and statewide innovative project for the first portion. And then the second portion will be a roundtable discussion about construction partnerships and looking at how technology can support traveler information, kind of real-time routing, and what partnerships across agencies within a region looks like. So similarly, I'll send out, most of you should have the calendar hold for that with the agenda, but I'll send it out just so that you have it easy access. And I hope y'all can join us. It's always fun to see people in person. We will have a Teams link if needed for the 23rd. And again, feel free to pass that along to people. Okay, I think that's the housekeeping stuff. Tried to talk quickly. Today we will have 3 presentations focused on SMART grants. So we've been doing this new format in 2025 where we kind of do a roundtable discussion style where we have multiple presentations on a related topic, and then we do a big Q&A at the end. So today we will hear from Harris County, from City of Fort Worth, and then we're excited to hear from a peer agency. So Will is with us from Vanderbilt representing Nashville DOT's SMART project. So certainly lessons learned in Harris County and Fort Worth from Texas perspective, but then also starting to look a bit more broadly in Nashville and Tennessee and what we can learn from peer agencies. So these projects range from flood sensors and warning systems to weather modeling to data fusion. And I think there are pieces that really each agency who may be on this call can pick up from this. So looking forward to it. We'll have time at the end for Q&A, but please do feel free to use the chat as well. I'll try to keep an eye on things and help facilitate that discussion. With that, Nicole, I will pass it to you to kick us off with the Harris County presentation. If you'll share your screen and just do a quick introduction, we'll get started.
Sure thing. Give me just 1 second here.
Yeah.
And it is not letting me share, of course. Okay. I'm heading select. Do I need to be a presenter by chance? Because it's not letting me share.
I don't think so. Why don't we, I think we've got the Fort Worth team second. So
Okay.
why don't we go with Fort Worth and I'll download your slides, Nicole, and share them from my
Okay,
end.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm clicking it. It's just not giving me the option.
No
Apologies.
worries. It's always tricky, no matter how many
Mhm.
times you're on teams. So, Armand and True Weather team, are y'all okay with kicking us off with Fort Worth's project?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. We're getting slides, so you're good.
Good, good. I'm gonna let Amon kick off. I'll drive the slides for you.
Perfect.
Awesome. And thank you for having us. So my name's Armand Bryant. I'm a transportation manager with Transportation and Public Works for the city of Fort Worth. And I'm also project manager for on the city side for the Smart Weatherization Grant. Do you want to slide? Okay, so I'm just going to give you a basic background of kind of what brought the city of Fort Worth into looking into this type of technology, and kind of what brought us there. So, as you all know, there was a big ice storm in 2021, and with that, there was a very tragic 133 car pileup that happened due to there being ice on the roads and due to there was ice on the roads, and there were general warnings, right, that were brought out, but there wasn't a way for us as there wasn't a way for us in this area to be able to pinpoint the specific locations where it could be where they were, and to be able to help people to find alternatives for that. And so one of the things we were looking for in light of instances like this, and the pattern we've been seeing with there being a more consistent freeze every single year, we started thinking about, all right, what are ways we can look at how the weather affects roadway conditions, and what are ways that we can invest in technology in this day and age to be able to to be able to identify areas that might have hazardous conditions based upon the weather. And we were thinking beyond just the freeze. We were thinking also about even further about like slick roads due to a first rain after a hot summer. In other words, just in general, what are ways we can look at where there are hazardous roadway conditions or deteriorated roadway conditions based upon what happened with the weather. And that is when, and as we were pondering this, right, that is when True Weather came at us with this proposal, as well as information about the SMART grant, which had recently been announced by the federal government. And so after hearing their proposal, we thought, oh, this will make a great partnership for us to be able to test out and see how we can be able to accomplish those goals. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Don, who will be able to explain the project and what we're doing.
Well, thank you very much. And it really was timely because, road weather and road weather, micro weather information has always been a challenge. Even, traditionally, even though we have road weather information systems, because they're not in every valley, because they're not in every area where fog can sit in or freezing rain could occur, you really don't know what's happening between those locations. So we depend on models really to fill the gap. But all we have to put in the model is the data we're collecting. Therefore, in those gaps, it becomes uncertain about what we think is happening. And so this road weather problem has been a problem. We're having the same problem in low altitude weather with aviation. We've traditionally had, very good weather systems for aviation, but the system was built for basically our conventional aviation. It wasn't built for helicopters and general aviators who fly between airports. And the only place we collect data today at airports is at airports. So we have the same gap problem when we're thinking about microclimates and low altitude operations of drones in between measurement stations and driving vehicles in between measurement stations. Now, True Weather really is very dedicated to solving this problem, both for conventional aviation and for traditional ground transportation. However, where we came in is we said, how is this problem going to really manifest itself with autonomy? Because once you take the pilot off the aircraft and the driver is not in control of the vehicle anymore, you're losing the best weather sensor you have on both those vehicles. And the pilot today in aircraft, they get out of a lot of surprise weather, and it's their job to do that. But once you take the pilot off, you don't have the sensors of the pilot anymore. Therefore, you have no data. You have no digital data about what's really happening. And the same is going to happen with trucks and vehicles, because yes, we have a lot of great sensors on these technologies, but they're all weather attenuated. LiDAR is affected by weather. Radar is affected by weather. Optical sensors are affected by weather. So even GPS is affected by space weather. So all these sensors that we're going to have on these autonomous vehicles that we're depending on keeping them safe in all weather conditions, they're going to be degraded in these weather conditions. So we need better digital weather data to know for certainty what's happening along the road where we have autonomous driving and in the air where we have autonomous vehicles. And that's our focus. So True Weather's been focusing on this since 2017. I'm a retired Air Force colonel. I ran big regional weather centers in the Air Force. I was an Air Force base commander. I was the science and technology director at the National Weather Service for 4 years. So I have a really good understanding of what the technologies are that are out there that we're not leveraging today to fill these gaps. And so the takeaway here is the current weather system was not built for uncrewed autonomous aircraft or level 4 or 5 autonomous ground vehicles. They weren't. It just isn't built for that. The system has few measurements below 5,000 feet and along roads. And so we have these large gaps. And so what we need to do is fill these gaps with digital information to compensate for the loss of the human sensor in these vehicles, and then get that data into machine-to-machine formats right into command and control systems. This is going to be a key component of success at scaling autonomous ground air vehicles at scale. Because what will happen is you could be safe in this environment without better data, but it means that you just won't go anywhere when the weather is marginal. And it's the uncertainty in our models that causes us to not do something, to be conservative, to be safe. And if we don't have more certainty in our data, we're going to have more cancellations of flights or ground transportation movements when they could have gone. And that is going to be an economic impact to this whole industry. You can't get around it if you don't have data, because you have to be safe. Therefore, you have to be conservative. That's what True Weather is trying to solve. We're trying to reduce the uncertainty that drives all this lack of flight when you can fly. 30% of aviation today, helicopters and GA especially, when they cancel due to weather, they could have flown. They canceled because they didn't know what the conditions were really going to be safe enough to take the risk. 30% of those are recoverable with better digital weather information. And that's what we want to try to prove in this pilot project, is that with better sensors, we get more certainty. With more certainty, you get more confidence about what's really going to happen, and you can proceed on those trips that will be safe, that today you would cancel, but also make sure that people know the risk if they are going to get in an autonomous vehicle, that if they hit a condition that their sensors are degraded, the vehicle is going to pull over. That's what it's going to do. And you're going to sit there. even though the human might be able to drive through it. And that's going to get frustrating also. So we need to make sure we have better data so we can anticipate where we might have real impacts, so you don't get caught sitting on the side of the road. And we've got to demonstrate where the certainty is high enough where we won't have demonstrable impacts that today would cancel that route. So what True Weather does is we take micro weather sensors, we integrate them into an API, and we get them back out to everyone. It's a simple, more simple plug and play than we traditionally are used to, because sensors, there's all types of data formats in sensors, and our systems that we use today, which you may be using in DOT's operations center, which you might be using in an aviation center, the software can't take in these sensor types because the data formats don't work and the software is all legacy. So what we've done is we've cleaned it all up. We're saying we got a brand new software infrastructure that's based on new standards. We're going to use JSON, GeoJSON formats. This data, these sensors are going to be easily integrated into our API, and we can easily integrate that to our end users for integration into their systems. And that's our goal. And also, we want to bring intermodal together here. We want you to have the same data types, the same data for ground and air, so that you can know when the ground transportation is going to be behind schedule to meet the air at the Alliance Airport. You don't want the aircraft, sitting there, or the cargo sitting there and not have space for it while the trucks are not getting there, or vice versa. You don't want the trucks waiting for the cargo and the aircraft are going to get delayed because we know the weather is not going to work. We want to share all this information and get it into a single system so we can better coordinate these impacts across the ecosystem, so that you can have smart information going to others who are being impacted, and they can change their plans proactively rather than just sitting there waiting for the aircraft to come in and wasting time and money. So our service is built around APIs. It's about low-cost sensors. It's about software subscription, SaaS, we call it, service subscription, data licensing, and we also offer professional services. The smart city concept is about demonstrating the ability to deploy and integrate a suite of these IoT sensors. We call them IoT because they're internet connected. And we then provide this consistent air and ground picture of weather hazards for all autonomous vehicles. So the ground vehicle and the air vehicles operating in this area will have a consistent picture of hazards. Now, those hazards may be different impacts based on the mode of travel, right? So obviously an aircraft is not as concerned about road ice because they're not on the road, but they are concerned about icing in the clouds, right? And you're concerned about freezing rain. So the weather is going to we're going to take these hazards and we're going to customize the application and the impacts to the appropriate mode of transportation. And so we're going to use these diverse sensors. We're going to feed them into a new model, hyper-local model that's much better than the models we have today that can't take this data in and capture it at the local scale, and really begin the process of doing machine learning and building a very hyper-local weather bubble around this area that's going to fully support smart operations, smart transportation operations, so that everyone is getting the same data and it's all being consistently translated into the applications you need, so everyone is not getting different information. The trucker thinks, oh, the airplanes are fine, that rain's not coming in. But the air guys say, well, my weather guy says the air's coming in, we're delayed. And the truck goes out there thinking, oh, well, my weather guy said this. And that's what we're trying to get away from. We want a consistent ecosystem and a consistent result. And so we're going to be deploying these sensors in this area, depicted here. There's going to be a mix of ground and air sensors. We're going to have 6 frost roadway sensors out there on the road. We're going to have vertical wind lidars. We're going to have scanning wind lidars to see what the winds are doing aloft for the aircraft. We're going to have more ability to measure ceiling height and visibility between METAR stations, so that if there's fog, localized fog in stratus, we'll know it's there. Today, we don't know if it's there or not because there's no way to measure it. We're going to fill in all these gaps with these sensor deployments. And then we're going to run our models, and then we're going to do a demonstration. The outcome of this is going to be a demonstration, not a full-up system. It's going to be a proof of concept. So what we're doing in these milestones is we're conducting a feasibility study. We have already done that. We have selected our sensors. We are getting in the process of deploying sensors right now. Very difficult to find real estate to do this. We've got a lot of help from Alliance Airport and the city of Fort Worth and the DOT and local municipalities. We couldn't do it without you guys. We really appreciate it. A lot of red tape we had to cut through. You've helped us. And then my team really, really reworking this over and over again to find the right places and the right weight limitations. We have some really big LiDARs, not big, they're heavy, they're 300 pounds. You're going to be on top of some of the buildings at Alliance Airport. And so we had to go through a lot of engineering to do this. But in the end, we're going to get this data flowing. We're going to also integrate the CASA network. So Brenda Phillips, good colleague of mine, you guys have the CASA weather radar, the best, X-band radar network probably in the world. We're going to be integrating that data in too, so that we can demonstrate all these data sets. We're going to be bringing in all existing data, like the CASA data, all existing ASOS data. And we're going to be bringing our sensors in, and we're going to be bringing that all together in a one-stop shop, getting all this data deployed out and to you guys in a one-stop shop. And then we'll start running our models. And then we'll feed our weather models into the road weather model that Frost has. So our weather models are going to be better now because we have all this data that's localized, and we're going to feed using the Frost sensors on the ground that are hyperlocal. And we're going to have much better data going into the road weather models now that should help us fill some of those gaps a little better. So when we have things like the icing problem that maybe is in between road weather sensors in Fort Worth, we will see it. And that's the hyperlocal piece, right? That's what we need for autonomous trucking. And then we're going to test the system. And then we're going to facilitate all these integrations with our partners. And we're going to get our APIs out. And then we're going to demonstrate through a special set of user interfaces what this looks like in a proof of concept. And then we're going to evaluate our performance on the different operational scenarios. And the goal is to make enough progress here and get enough people excited that we could put in a phase 2 that's more expansive with the city of Fort Worth and maybe beyond into Dallas. And what I want to just mention to folks here is that we are looking at Houston because we do have WISC going to Houston and we support, some entities. We are looking at Tennessee, and we encourage, you guys to reach out to us if you think this micro weather problem does impact you, and we can get ahead of this as we bring in new advanced air mobility into places like Harris County, or we have autonomous trucks driving from Houston to Dallas. How do we get that corridor properly sensed for that? So thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Don. And let's actually hold questions until the end just to make sure that we get through each of these 3 presentations. I see one in the chat that I'll keep an eye on and bring back up at the end. But thanks so much, Armand from City of Fort Worth and Don from the True Weather team. I think this is huge. I've done a couple projects using TxDOT's ESS sensors that are kind of standard weather sensing stations. And the micro modeling piece is huge. The projects that I did, it would be like a road weather warning for the entire I-45 corridor between Houston and Dallas, for example, which, you start to drivers lose trust in that sort of data when it's just a huge geographic area that they have to be aware of. So I think the micro piece is awesome. And I like the use case at Alliance Texas, where you're looking at integration between modes for freight optimization and load optimization. I think there's a lot to learn there. So thanks, y'all. Okay, let's transition. Nicole, I will pull up your slides and we'll move into the Harris County project. And you can just let me know when to move on. slide
Sounds
wise.
good.
Well, there we go. How's that?
That's it.
Good.
Perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Chinea. I'm a senior planner with Harris County Engineering. I am in the Planning and Community Resiliency Group. I'm here to talk today about our SMART Grant Award, which was a sensor-based project leveraging smart sensors. And essentially, the goal with this project, as you know, as we all know, Houston has a huge flooding problem, and Harvey brought this to light more so than ever, which spawned a countywide study looking at emergency measures at the roadway level. So the SMART Award, we utilized the results of the study to apply for the fiscal year 22 SMART grant to look at implementing sensors outside of Harris County flood control, and in addition to what they have currently installed, and focusing more on the roadway level, and then using that to create a dashboard to be able to have the public view for the future. We were awarded $2 million in fiscal year 22 through that effort, and we're successful in that grant submission. Next slide, please. So this is a look into our timeline. So the grant submission was for fiscal year 22. We were awarded the grant in 2023. We are just now getting ready to go into procurement. It took a very long time for our agreement to get finalized. Unfortunately, that was kind of a huge lag. And then now we are in the midst of dealing with procurement process, which is creating a little bit of another lag. We are hoping to have our RFQ out in the next 30 to 60 days because we have a finish line of 2026. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what we hope to accomplish then. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, our grant submission was based on an emergency measure study, which was a county focused on throughout Harris County and unincorporated Harris County. And what the study did is it looked at flood data, multiple flood events, existing sensors, floodplain, and gave us a good idea and a scoring on flood locations throughout unincorporated Harris County. As part of the study, the deliverable was a tool. If you look here to the left where it says safety, equity, resiliency, and economic, this is a sliding scale. And so this allowed the county to be able to toggle and shift the weight of these 4 factors, changing the overall scores that you're seeing here on the right. For the intent and purpose of the grant, we kept everything at 25% equal across the board. But you see here on the right, that gave us anything over an 85 and above, which is in red. So for the purposes of our grant submission, we focused on those locations. As you can see, there is over 200 locations that were highlighted through the study that were deemed in need of an emergency measure at the roadway level. Next slide, please. So because this is a pilot program, we only focused on 7 installations due to the amount of money that we received. What we're looking at here are, we have 4 precincts in Harris County, and so we wanted to make sure that we were meeting the need of each of those precincts. So with our partners at Flood Control, we did a lot of field study, taking the locations out of the study, but we went out in the field and kind of put our eyes on it. We wanted to deem what was existing technology that was already there that we could leverage, and then what we could use the grant to complement in regards to the hardware being installed at the roadway level. And then the next step, getting that data into a dashboard to be able to do some analysis and then public outreach. Next slide, please. So the study focused on multiple different technologies. So we currently have, Harris County right now through flood control has flashing sensors, and we have tipping buckets throughout the county, but there are huge gaps. And what happens is that a lot of these sensors are at the bridge and kind of waterway level. They're not at the roadway level. So one of the things that we see in flooding events here in Houston, Harris County specifically, our goal was to avoid people from getting to the bridge, to the waterway. So we wanted to back those sensors up, and through this pilot, put some technologies in place at the roadway level, well before folks are even able to drive down the road and they can safely turn around and not hit some water. Next slide, please. So this is the locations. So what we did was we mapped the locations. And so with flood control, we kind of looked at, where are our parks and green spaces? Where are our floodplains? Where does Harris County Flood Control currently have gauges that are within close proximity of the locations that the study had revealed? And then what other locations, where are they at as on a grand scheme in regards to Harris County? And so as you can see on this map, the P where it says PCT4, and I'm sorry, I don't have a pointer. You have PCT 1, 2, 3, and 4, and these are the 4 precincts within Harris County for any of those that aren't familiar with Harris County. And so where the red line segments are on this map is where we are going to be focusing on our installations for the pilot. So they're pretty spaced out. Some are closer to waterways than others, but with flood control's help, this is kind of what we decided would be the best use of the pilot program for our grant award. Next slide, please. So, excuse me. When looking at these, we kind of wanted to present the approach to each of these locations is going to be different. It's not a one size fits all, install a tipping bucket at every single location. And there was some current infrastructure already in place in regards to communication and fiber and CCTV and whatnot. So this was kind of a little key that we kind of put in place to show graphically kind of where we would anticipate tipping buckets and rain gauges, flashers and CCTV devices, and then data connection that would need to be existing based on using the locations from the study. But the study also, in addition, and I don't think I mentioned, made suggestions on what type of technology and measure should go at each location. So this mirrors what the study relayed to us, but we wanted to marry up what was in the field already versus what we would need to put in for budgetary reasons. Next slide, please. So, of course, we kind of wanted to put it into, we were presenting to our leadership because our ultimate goal is to do this at a very much grander scale. So we had to kind of think pilot, but also think reality, which is Harris County. So we broke it into levels. And so the first level, we deemed as new hardware and software. The second level is the existing hardware is there, likely by flood control, but we would be putting in a new software, typically CCTV or communications. And then level 3 is that everything is already in place. We would just need to connect to it, right? The hardware's there and the software is there already. Level 4, as part of the grant stipulation, we needed to do an interagency coordination. And so there is a location that was that we'll be proposing that is partnering with TxDOT and flood control to meet that requirement. So we kind of wanted to make sure we highlighted that separate and made that the level 4 implementation. Next slide, please. So these are the locations that we ended up getting finalized and approved with the help of flood control and our team here within Harris County Engineering, Planning, and our study. So as you can see, these locations are across all 4 precincts. So I'm going to start at the very top, which is Cypresswood Drive. That's precinct 3. And the green designates data communications. And that is a technology that would be new. So the flashers and the tipping buckets are already in place here. So at this location, the only measure that we will be focusing on is more of the data and the communications to be able to get the readings into our data from this location. Moving clockwise to precinct 1 to the right, Green River Drive. That location has tipping buckets already, but does not have flashers or communication access. And so that location will be focusing on leveraging the existing infrastructure, which is the tipping bucket, adding the sensor and being sure that there's communications in place to be able to push that data to a system. Below that is precinct 2, Market Street. Same as Green River, will be just the new infrastructure there will be the flasher and the data component. And then moving over to the last, on the left is Psalms Greenhouse Road and North Fry Road. And these two, same. Tipping bucket is already in place, but we will be installing a flasher and comms. So looking at this, basically, a lot of what we were going to be doing once the sensors are in place in these new locations is determining how they work together, new versus existing, and then getting the data out. That is the big lift of this pilot program. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the component that we needed to look at other jurisdictions. So who of our neighbors could we partner with? One of the requirements of this grant was that it needed to be expandable. It needed to be something that someone else could take and implement after education. And so these were the locations that we looked at, which was Waller County, which is a neighboring county, City of Tomball, City of Houston, and San Jacinto River Authority. Next slide, please. So from there, once we kind of knew what we were doing, or I should say what we were doing and where we were doing it, we needed to kind of get a look of what it is. And I realize we're running out of time, so I'll kind of fly by these. These are all of the locations by road, and it basically demonstrates where the low point is, the infrastructure that is there, and where we're proposing to install the technology. So some of these locations, this little green dot in the center here reflects a gauge that Harris County already has, Harris County Flood Control has. And so we'll be leveraging that. But you can see from this point, we're focusing on the intersections. So the flooding is taking place in that middle where that waterway is, but we don't want folks to get there, right? We're trying to avoid that. And so we're focusing on putting the technologies at the roadway level to be able to communicate do not pass to get to where that gauge is, that green dot. Next slide, please. Same concept. This is just describing where the gauge is, where waterways are, major highways, and then where we would put the actual sensor. So just giving a visual of most of our focus is on the intersection. Our goal, again, is to avoid people from getting to the bridge, in this case specifically. Next slide, please. And again, similar situation. There are CCTV cameras out in this location here in Precinct 3. One of the things about this location that's unique is if you see this in the top left-hand corner, there's the raised cabinet. These cabinets were installed raised to avoid flooding, but was not successful in all cases. And so we are looking at how that's going to affect, because that will be how the data is communicated. So that's going to be something that may need to be taken into consideration because it may not be enough. And this location had that. And so we wanted to take that into consideration when we were putting some measures in. Here in this location, like I said, there's already some fiber optic camera, CCTV stuff that is managed by Harris County. And so we'll be leveraging that for this location. There's multiple locations throughout the study in Harris County that the consultant did suggest us put cameras in. And so we wanted to make sure that we tested that through the pilot as well. Next slide, please. Okay. Again, you can see we're putting it at the intersection here. You can see where the flood gauge is. You can see where the channel is. And so our goal is to avoid traffic on Greenhouse altogether during a flood event. Here as well. Next slide. This is the interagency location that we were required to include as part of our pilot program, and this is Independence Parkway. So in the top left, there's a ferry that allows access between the two over the waterway. And so this area, I wish I would have put pictures in here for folks who are not familiar with Independence Parkway. You're essentially driving and the water's right next to you on a good day. So during a rain event, not even a major rain event, this area is very prone to flooding. And so working with TxDOT and Hectra, we know that there's existing signage and there's DMS signage there currently, but the Lynchburg community is on the other side of I-10 and where this neighborhood is. And so we wanted to make sure that we thought that this was a very good candidate based on its rankings. As you can see, it ranked very, very high. And we would be working closely with partners that we already have existing relationships with. Next slide.
That's the last one, I think.
That's the last one. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think I added one to my updated presentation, but no worries. Thank you so much for your help, Anna.
Oh, sure thing. Thanks, Nicole. That's super interesting. I see some questions in the chat, which I'm happy to connect folks afterwards as well if there's further discussion. But this is a great project, and I think some parallels with the Fort Worth one in terms of good weather data from sensors, and then also like data fusion and making sure that we have the real-time information, but then that's also being shared out in an effective way. So thanks so much, Nicole. Lots to learn there. I will now pass it to Will to close us out. We'll try to save just 5 or so minutes at the end for questions, but if we need to connect folks afterwards, I'm happy to do that as well. Fun fact, Will and one of the grad students on our team, Gracie, worked together at Vanderbilt. So small world, and it's always fun to have familiar faces. So thanks for being here, Will. I will pass it to you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. And thank you guys for the opportunity to present on our SMART grant here. We always love sharing the results of this project and talking to other folks about how some of these things might be useful in other communities. So I'm here on behalf of the LATAMS project team. There's a lot of people involved in this project. For the sake of time, I won't go through them all, but we have a large team here in Nashville and across the state of Tennessee. This project really began as a Vision Zero focused project looking at multimodal safety using new ITS technology. And I'm proud to say that I think we've really accomplished those goals in addition to adding new ones. We've also looked at improving traffic efficiency using some of the techniques that I'm going to share with you today. So there's a lot of new potential here with new transportation technology, and I think this project has really set the stage to grow what we're doing here in Nashville and scale these efforts up. We were awarded a Stage 2 grant as part of this project, which is going to begin very soon and is going to increase the scale of what we're doing in Nashville by around 10 or 11 times. So our Stage 1 project moved extremely quickly. After we got done with team formation and paperwork and all this stuff, procurement and all these things, we moved really quickly into construction, deployment, testing, integration, and had to really push that stuff on a tight timeline. We continue these efforts, in terms of data analytics and further scaling of the technology. But I will emphasize that the project team really came together to move this forward extremely quickly, and I know that there are a lot of challenges in doing so. So I think we're really proud of those accomplishments. One of the lessons learned in moving quickly here was really to involve the entire team at every step of the process, not in the sense of copying everybody on every email, but really kind of getting everybody hands-on and involved in meetings and testing and field work, so that everybody kind of understands the entire picture of what's going on at all times. A brief outline, and I'm going to run through things pretty quickly here for the sake of time and leaving some time for questions, but I'm going to give an introduction to the technology, intelligent transportation systems, LiDAR, and how this is used on our roadways. I'm going to go walk through the fixed infrastructure sensing that was part of this project, and also how we evaluated and really came to the conclusion that this technology was really promising and had a future in Nashville and other places. Finally, I'm going to tease a couple things on mobile sensing as well as talk about our future plans. So you might be familiar with the multitude of transportation sensors that we deploy at intersections in order to detect if vehicles and pedestrians and other road users are at that signalized intersection waiting for an opportunity to cross. Some of those technologies include inductive loops in the pavement, radar sensors, cameras, and LiDAR is sort of a new entrant to that technology space. But the LiDAR technology overall has come a really long way in the last 5 years and has really made possible a lot of the things that we expect today. So we're able to see all road users as part of the LiDAR sensing. We're able to localize really, really precisely down to just a couple inches exactly where every one of those objects is within the intersection. We typically use 2 sensors at an intersection, which I'll show more about later on. And those help cover each other's blind spots, but we don't necessarily need a sensor for each approach of the intersection. And finally, we can reduce this really, really high resolution data and these exact precise object detections down into something that the traffic controller can understand by sort of reducing this into zones. So when we're looking at, is a vehicle waiting to turn left, we have no problem localizing that turn lane just as you would do with something like an inductive loop. So this fits into the broader landscape of traffic sensors, but potentially offers us some new things in terms of pedestrians, bikes, and vehicle classification. Here's a really quick video of one of the Vision Zero results that we got really early on. This is from our very, very first installation. Here you see a few yellow dots in the center of the screen representing a walking pedestrian. So that pedestrian is crossing the road outside of a crosswalk. So you can see the intersections are at the top of the screen, and that pedestrian crosses the road here just as the light is changing. And then just a couple seconds, less than 2 seconds after that, a vehicle speeds by behind that pedestrian at around 35 miles per hour. While this might not look like a particularly close call, I will note that this happened in basically pitch black darkness. So this was around 11 o'clock at night. And that pedestrian, we were not sure if they were actually seen by that vehicle. Perhaps they were, but in the case that they're not, this is really important information to know in terms of near miss statistics and what we can do to improve safety at this intersection, which I'll get into more later. And next, I want to show one of the sort of end results of the project and something that we developed in-house here at Vanderbilt. This is showing all of the data coming from the entire Stage 1 SMART grant. So this is live data. Well, this is pre-recorded, but this is a recording of live data that's coming from every intersection and installation that we did in real time. And here we're coloring these vehicles by the speed that they're currently driving at or walking at. And we also are highlighting a couple particular categories of vehicles. So you'll see these purple buses. Those are actually our transit buses here in Nashville. They have a purple color scheme, so we kind of did this little photorealistic rendering. And we also have GTFS transit integration as part of this software tool. So you see here we're highlighting the bus schedule. And so by putting all this data on the same map, this is a really powerful visualization and operations tool for the Traffic Management Center to understand what's going on a corridor and look at that holistically. Instead of looking at individual intersections, we really want to increase the power of this to be corridor wide and understand the operations from a more holistic view. As this scales up, we're working on the scalability of this software tool in order to handle an entire city's worth of data. Overall, this project has received really positive community support. One thing we heard very early on in the project was actually that the residents of the community were really concerned about privacy and didn't want additional cameras in their backyard. And rather than argue with that, I mean, people have different opinions on that, and that's perfectly fine. We think we can preserve data privacy when we do data analytics, but rather than fight that battle, we kind of pivoted to the LiDAR technology very early on and removed the cameras from the equation. That's not to say that the ITS cameras are not a good technology or not suitable in some cases, but that was something that we heard as community feedback at the very beginning of the project, and something that we made a quick pivot on to make sure that we were pleasing the community that really we wanted this to benefit. So I'll walk through a quick sort of installation guide in terms of what this actually looks like. Here's a quick time lapse of the contractor installing this. There's actually some other work going on at this intersection at that same time from the electrical utility. But what this actually looks like is an ITS contractor or an electrician installing 2 of these sensors, one on both on the traffic signal support arms. Here's the first one, and then this is going to be sensor 1 of 2. and there we are in the cabinet working on some of the wiring and getting these landed on the edge computer, which processes all that data in real time into object detections. And we should pivot here over to the second sensor installation, which occurs diagonal to the first one. And we situate them in this way so that they can cover each other's blind spots. And if a large vehicle comes through the middle of the intersection, we're not occluding half of the intersection when that vehicle comes through. So two sensors per intersection. This whole process takes around 3 to 4 hours and per intersection, and we were actually able to reduce that as the project went on. So these sensors again land on an edge computer that's installed in the traffic cabinet. That edge computer can then connect to the controller via NTCIP or SDLC. So multiple ways to do that, and put in those calls to the traffic controller so that it can do the intersection actuation based on the data the LiDAR is producing. And just 24 hours, or I guess it's 48 hours post installation of our first intersection, we noticed an interesting pattern at this particular location, which is that there's actually a small gap between the apartment buildings here that we didn't even kind of realize existed, even though I spent a few hours out there at the intersection. And that gap between those residences was a major source of traffic for pedestrians crossing the street over to a convenience store on the other side of the road. And so that is sort of one of these interesting dynamics that we don't necessarily see from an engineering perspective, but when we look at collecting some data over time, it reveals, a preference of pedestrians or road users that we didn't fully understand. So this data was really useful and really resulted in some interventions that we performed at this intersection to try and see, can we change people's behavior, and importantly, can we measure how that behavior change is occurring. So our full deployment involved 8 locations across this particular corridor of Nashville. And those we had to adapt a little bit as we went, kind of making accommodations for the variety of infrastructure that's out there. But this was important collaboration with the contractor on this project, which was Stansell Electric here in Nashville. And so, we personally worked very, very closely with them to kind of standardize these installs and make this as seamless as possible. So going into evaluation a little bit, I'm going to highlight in particular the near miss detection, because this is a very important part of the project, as I mentioned, from a safety perspective. And this was early on, we got great data on near misses. We found a variety of modalities in which those are occurring, and we manually validated a lot of those to make sure that the LiDAR is accurately classifying them. We also looked at, as I mentioned, some interventions along this corridor in order to see if we can change pedestrian behavior, particularly at this location that we identified with a lot of out-of-crosswalk behavior. That's not a permanent intervention, but really is just a proof of concept that we can close the loop from data gathering to making an engineering change to measuring how that engineering change impacted safety. We also looked at some speed interventions across the corridor as well, and similarly, we're able to get a really, really quick evaluation timeline on that dimension. Finally, I'll kind of just look really quickly at kind of a new area we're going into, which is mobile sensing. So we put this same ITS LiDAR on a mobile trailer platform, both in Nashville and in our neighboring city of Clarksville. And this mobile platform has been really successful in quickly delivering insights that the city needs for particular areas. So just the other week, we were able to, in less than a week, deliver data for one of our councilmen who was concerned about safety at a particular intersection. And so we got the LiDAR trailer out there and collected that data much faster than you could even get a consultant under contract to do that work. We've also used that trailer to look at queuing around one of our interstates here. So we were able to generate really high resolution time space diagrams, the exact sort that signal engineers are looking at for optimizing signal timings. I'll skip through a couple of these and jump to future plans really quick to conclude. Again, I mentioned that Stage 2 SMART grant. That's a $10 million project that's going to increase our scale by around 10x here in Nashville, as well as give us the chance to give some hardware away to partner cities. who are interested in getting their hands on this technology and trying it out. So if you're interested in becoming one of those partner cities, please reach out to me. We're currently soliciting partners for that program because we want to make sure that this is broadly beneficial to the transportation community. And finally, I'll last slide here, just a kind of partly a joke, but partly serious. We are working actively on an installation on Broadway in downtown Nashville. If you're familiar with Broadway, you know that it's a crazy place that people come to enjoy country music and the culture of Nashville. And it gets pretty wild down there on a Friday or Saturday night. Additionally, occasionally we have football celebrations down on Broadway. This is a helicopter video of when Vanderbilt beat Alabama. The students took down the goalpost and walked it like 2.5 miles down to the river, and they crossed right through Broadway. So we were joking that the LiDAR needs to incorporate goalpost detection as well. But this is going to be a really fun project and a really big test of the technology when it comes to detecting thousands of pedestrians simultaneously. And so we're excited to kind of push it to its limits here. So with that, I'll conclude. And yeah, if we don't have enough time for questions, please get in touch later on with me, and happy to answer any of those offline.
Thank you, Will. That's awesome. I love the visuals. And the mobile sensing LiDAR technology is awesome. I haven't seen that before. And for people doing turn counts in Texas, I think that would be welcome technology. We'll do a few quick questions and then I'll follow up with everyone over email. There's a question about LiDAR cost and maintenance and how that compares to like camera costs and maintenance.
Sure. Yeah, I think if you're interested in potentially deploying one of these systems, please reach out to your vendors and they can give you exact pricing. But I will say that generally the technology is competitive with other detection technologies. Might be a little bit more on the pricey side if we're kind of ranking the technologies, but we're in the territory of price parity, especially if you care about multimodal sensing and high resolution data collection. That may be kind of the tipping point that might push you over. I saw there was also a quick question about the LiDAR mounted on a drone. This is actually mounted on a trailer with a telescoping mast. And the trailer is a hybrid battery, solar, and diesel generator. So it has over a month of no-touch runtime, more in a bright area with solar availability.
Thanks, Will. And I liked your point also about the privacy of LiDAR versus camera. And then Nicole, it looks like there was a quick question for you about flood alerts. Is it only the flashing lights or is there like a cellular based alert as well?
It will be both.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's going to be a combination of both.
Awesome. Okay, thank you all so much. I will send some connection pieces for folks that had questions afterwards just to make sure that your questions are answered. And if there are follow-ups, we can facilitate that. Thank you so much to the Harris County team, the Fort Worth team and True Weather, and Will representing the Nashville DOT and broader consortium team. This was awesome. It's always great to hear about projects going on across Texas, but then also in peer agencies as well. So I encourage y'all to follow up and hope to see you guys in person on April 23rd for our spring in-person meeting. Take care.